Emma sat quietly at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the worn edges of the photo album that lay open before her. Each picture told a story: birthdays, holidays, school achievements, but to her, they told a different tale. A tale of shadows cast by her older brother James, the golden child, whose every success was celebrated like a victory for the whole family. Growing up in the Henderson household was a lesson in invisibility. Emma learned early that her worth was measured not by who she was, but by how she compared to James. When he scored the highest grades, the entire family beamed with pride. When Emma brought home a decent report card, it was met with silence, or worse, a sigh of disappointment. Her parents, Michael and Laura, had high expectations, especially for James, who was to inherit the family business. He was charming, confident, and the embodiment of everything they wanted in a son. Emma was the quiet one, the good girl who never made waves, but whose dreams were quietly dismissed. At school, Emma worked hard, excelling in her own right. She balanced after-school jobs with advanced classes, determined to prove she was more than just James's shadow. But every step forward was met with subtle reminders that she was second best. Invitations to family dinners were often extended to James and his friends, while Emma found herself eating alone or helping with chores. The summer before her senior year, Emma discovered the extent of the favoritism when she learned that her parents had transferred her savings account into James's name without telling her. The money, they said, was being consolidated to prepare James for his future role. Betrayal cut deep. Emma confronted her parents, but their responses were dismissive, wrapped in excuses and guilt-tripping. She realized then that the fight for recognition would be harder than she ever imagined. That night alone in her room, Emma made a decision. She would no longer be silent. She would find her own path, one defined by her own choices, not by the shadows of her family's expectations. Emma sat quietly at the kitchen table, the early morning light filtering softly through the lace curtains. Her fingers traced the worn edges of the photo album that lay open before her, snapshots of birthdays, holidays, and school achievements that to anyone else might seem joyful. But to Emma, they told a different story. A story of being unseen, unheard, and overshadowed by her older brother James, the golden child, whose every triumph was heralded with loud applause and family celebration. Growing up in the Henderson household had taught Emma the art of invisibility. From a young age, she learned that her worth was not defined by who she was, but by how well she measured up to James. When he brought home straight A's, their parents' faces lit up with pride. When she earned a B+ on a test, it was met with quiet disappointment, or worse, complete indifference. Her father, Michael, was a stern man, a self-made businessman whose entire world revolved around success, power, and legacy. Her mother, Laura, was a socialite who maintained the perfect image of the family to friends and neighbors, but seldom offered Emma more than a passing glance. Both adored James, not just for his accomplishments, but because he fit the mold of what they wanted their son to be: charming, confident, destined to inherit the family empire. Emma, on the other hand, was the quiet observer, the good girl who never caused trouble, but whose dreams were quietly dismissed before they even had a chance to take root. She buried herself in books, schoolwork, and after-school jobs, determined to prove she was worthy not just to her family, but to herself. At school, Emma excelled quietly. She took advanced classes, worked part-time at the local library, and volunteered at community events. But despite her hard work, she rarely received praise. Invitations to family dinners were extended to James and his friends, while Emma found herself eating alone or assigned to chores that no one else wanted to do. Her parents' favoritism was subtle but unyielding. James was shielded from criticism and scolded rarely, while Emma was held to impossibly high standards and blamed for minor mistakes. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" was a refrain that haunted her childhood. The summer before her senior year marked a turning point. While organizing her financial documents, Emma stumbled upon a shocking truth: her parents had transferred her entire savings account into James's name without her knowledge or consent. When confronted, Michael and Laura dismissed it as consolidating assets to prepare James for the future. Their tone was patronizing, and their words cut deep. Feeling betrayed and humiliated, Emma realized the extent of the injustice she had endured. She was not merely unseen, her very future had been redirected without her permission. The money she had saved from her part-time jobs, the small nest egg meant for college and independence, was gone. That night, in the quiet of her room, surrounded by walls that had witnessed her silent suffering, Emma made a decision. She would no longer be a passive observer in her own life. No longer would she accept being the invisible daughter, the forgotten second child. She would fight for recognition, for respect, and most importantly, for herself. As tears blurred her vision, she penned a letter, not an angry outburst, but a carefully written testament of her worth, her dreams, and the injustice she had faced. She left it on her parents' bedside table, a silent but powerful declaration of her resolve. Emma's journey was just beginning. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, heartbreak, and revelations. But for the first time in her life, she felt a spark of something new: hope. The weeks following that summer night were some of the hardest Emma had ever faced. The letter she left on her parents' bedside table was never addressed directly, yet its weight lingered in the air like an unspoken challenge. Michael and Laura's dismissive silence was more painful than any argument. Their refusal to acknowledge her feelings only deepened the invisible walls that separated them. Emma's daily life became a delicate balancing act. At school, she pushed herself harder, channeling her frustration into grades and achievements. She took on extra shifts at the library and a weekend job at a local cafe, determined to save enough money to escape the shadow of her family. But it wasn't just the financial struggle, it was the emotional toll. Family gatherings became battlegrounds of passive aggression and cold shoulders. James, seemingly oblivious to the tension, continued to bask in the spotlight. His success was paraded around like a trophy, while Emma's accomplishments were ignored or minimized. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Emma found herself sitting alone in her room, phone in hand, hesitating to call her best friend Maya. The words she longed to say stuck in her throat, words about feeling unseen, about the weight of unfairness pressing down on her shoulders. When she finally dialed Maya's warm voice was a lifeline. "Emma, you don't have to carry this alone." The friendship became Emma's refuge, a place where she could be heard and valued without judgment. Maya encouraged her to speak out, to refuse to be silenced by the injustice she faced. Inspired by Maya's unwavering support, Emma began to document everything: financial records, family conversations, and moments of favoritism. She started researching her rights, seeking advice from counselors and legal aid groups. The discovery of her savings being transferred without consent became the catalyst for a broader fight. Emma's decision to confront her family led to a stormy dinner one night. She laid out her evidence, demanding answers and accountability. The room was thick with tension as Michael's face hardened and Laura looked away, tears glistening unspoken. "You don't understand what this means for James," Michael said sharply. "He is the future of this family." Emma's voice trembled but did not break. "And what about my future? Am I not part of this family too?" The argument left wounds that would take time to heal, but it marked a turning point. For the first time, Emma refused to be invisible. Outside the walls of the Henderson home, Emma began to envision a life defined not by her family's expectations, but by her own dreams. The fight for recognition was just beginning, and she was ready to face it head-on. Emma's life was a constant juggling act, balancing schoolwork, jobs, and the growing storm within her family. The quiet strength she had cultivated in silence was beginning to roar. She was no longer the invisible daughter, but a young woman determined to claim her place in the world. Her days started before dawn and ended long after dusk. At the library, she helped patrons navigate shelves of books and research databases, always with a polite smile that masked exhaustion. At the cafe, she served coffee and pastries to customers, the hum of conversation, a comforting backdrop to her thoughts. Yet beneath the surface, a fire burned. Each paycheck brought her closer to independence, each class a step toward her dreams. Emma enrolled in community college courses focusing on business and law fields that fascinated her and promised a way to fight back. Her evenings were often spent poring over legal resources and budgeting spreadsheets, guided by the quiet encouragement of Maya, who never failed to remind her of her worth. The emotional battles were harder. Family dinners became a minefield of sharp looks and cold comments. James, oblivious or indifferent, continued to receive the praise Emma deserved. Michael and Laura's dismissiveness deepened, but Emma met it with resilience. One afternoon, Emma met with a counselor recommended by a local support group. Sharing her story, the years of neglect and favoritism brought tears but also relief. She learned that her feelings were valid and that she deserved respect and equality. Armed with knowledge and growing confidence, Emma began reaching out to legal aid organizations, seeking advice on how to reclaim her savings and assert her rights. The path was complicated, filled with bureaucratic hurdles and emotional setbacks, but Emma refused to give up. Her relationship with James grew strained but honest. A rare conversation revealed cracks in his own facade, pressure to live up to expectations, fear of failure, and guilt he rarely voiced. Though distant, it was a step toward understanding. Emma also found solace in writing a journal of hopes, frustrations, and small victories. Words became her therapy and her weapon, a way to process pain and imagine a brighter future. The turning point came when she received a letter from a legal advocate offering to take her case pro bono. The fight for justice was no longer a distant dream. It was within reach. Emma looked out her bedroom window at the stars, feeling a mix of fear and hope. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but she was ready. No longer silent, she was rising, ready to break free from the shadows and claim her story. The sterile walls of the legal aid office smelled faintly of paper and determination. Emma sat across from Karen, the advocate assigned to her case, clutching a folder thick with documentation, bank statements, letters, and notes chronicling years of neglect and financial manipulation. Karen's eyes were sharp and kind as she reviewed the files. "This isn't just about the money," she said firmly. "It's about your rights, your dignity, and setting a precedent for others in your position." Emma nodded, the weight of months of preparation settling into a fierce resolve. The decision to pursue legal action against her own parents was daunting, but the injustice she'd endured left her no choice. The initial meetings involved gathering testimonies, contacting witnesses, and filing the necessary paperwork. Emma found herself navigating unfamiliar territory, legal jargon, court procedures, and the slow, often frustrating pace of the justice system. Meanwhile, at home, tensions soared. Michael's anger simmered beneath forced civility. Laura's guilt warred with loyalty, and James vacillated between denial and reluctant support. Family dinners became battlegrounds where words were weapons and silence screamed louder than any confrontation. Emma's stand challenged the very foundation of their relationships. Despite the emotional toll, Emma found unexpected allies, friends, counselors, and community members who rallied around her. Maya organized fundraisers to help with legal costs, while teachers and employers offered flexible schedules and encouragement. In the courtroom, the battle lines were drawn. Michael's legal team argued that the transfers were administrative errors made with the family's best interests in mind. Emma's counsel presented meticulous evidence proving deliberate financial abuse and manipulation. The hearings were intense and draining. Emma listened to testimonies that dredged up painful memories, but also revealed the depth of her parents' favoritism and control. Outside the courtroom, media attention grew. Emma became a reluctant spokesperson for family justice, sharing her story with the hope of inspiring others to stand against similar injustices. Through it all, Emma's spirit remained unbroken. She learned to set boundaries, to demand respect, and to believe in her own strength. The journey was far from over, but with every legal victory and personal breakthrough, Emma edged closer to reclaiming not just her inheritance, but her identity. The courtroom battles waged on, but Emma found strength beyond the legal documents and courtroom drama. Each day brought new challenges, but also moments of unexpected grace and resilience. Her relationship with her parents remained strained. Michael's cold detachment was a constant reminder of the years lost to neglect, while Laura's tentative apologies hinted at a mother trapped between guilt and denial. James, once distant, began showing signs of remorse, though the road to reconciliation was slow and uncertain. Outside the courtroom, Emma's life flourished in small but meaningful ways. Her part-time jobs allowed her to save steadily, and her community college courses fueled her ambitions. She began volunteering at a local advocacy group for victims of financial abuse, turning her personal struggle into a source of hope for others. One evening, after a long day of hearings, Emma sat with Maya in a quiet cafe. "You've come so far," Maya said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "You're not just fighting for yourself anymore." Emma smiled, the weight of the journey tempered by the support around her. She was learning that strength wasn't just about winning battles, it was about enduring, growing, and finding light in the darkest times. The legal proceedings reached a critical phase when a mediator was appointed to facilitate a potential settlement. The tension was palpable as both sides prepared for negotiations that could either heal or further fracture the family. Emma entered the room with cautious hope, armed with the truth, and backed by unwavering determination. The conversations were difficult, raw, with years of pain and unmet expectations. But for the first time, voices were heard and walls began to crack. Though the path ahead remained uncertain, Emma felt a profound sense of agency. She was no longer defined by her family's injustices, but by her courage to face them head-on. As the chapter of litigation unfolded, Emma's vision for her future grew clearer. One where she could thrive on her own terms, free from shadows and full of possibility. The air was thick with anticipation as Emma stepped into the softly lit mediation room, the faces around the table a mix of hope and apprehension. Months of legal battles and personal confrontations had led to this moment, a chance to bridge the chasms carved by years of neglect and favoritism. Michael's eyes, usually sharp and unyielding, flickered with something new, perhaps uncertainty, or the dawning realization of the pain he'd caused. Laura sat beside him, her hands trembling slightly, a silent apology etched in her posture. James, distant yet earnest, watched Emma with cautious hope. The mediator's voice was calm but firm, guiding the conversation through difficult terrain. Emma spoke first, her voice steady but vulnerable. She laid bare her pain and her longing not just for justice, but for a family that saw and valued her. Her parents listened, sometimes defensively, sometimes with tears. The process was neither quick nor easy. Old wounds surfaced, words cut deep, but amidst the storm cracks formed in the walls that had kept them apart. Outside mediation, Emma continued to build her life. Her business flourished, fueled by creativity and newfound confidence. Volunteering became more than service. It was a calling, a way to turn her story into a beacon for others. She and James cautiously rebuilt their sibling bond, sharing memories and hopes for a future unshackled from their parents' shadows. Their conversations, once sparse and guarded, grew into honest dialogues filled with empathy and understanding. Emma also found peace in forgiveness, not as a concession, but as a liberation from the chains of resentment. It was a journey marked by setbacks and breakthroughs, but each step brought healing. One evening, as she sat beneath a canopy of stars, Emma reflected on how far she had come from the unseen daughter to a woman claiming her story with courage and grace. The road ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, Emma embraced it with open arms, ready to face whatever came with strength born of struggle and hope. The soft hum of city life filtered through the open window as Emma sat at her desk, surrounded by sketches and designs for her growing jewelry business. The rhythmic tapping of her pen on paper echoed the steady beat of her newfound confidence. After years of struggle and hardship, she was finally carving out a life on her own terms, a life filled with purpose and promise. The past was still there, lingering like a shadow at the edges of her consciousness, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it served as a reminder of her strength and resilience. Each piece she crafted carried a story of survival and hope, a testament to the journey she had endured. Her relationship with James had evolved into one of cautious camaraderie. They met regularly, sharing laughter, frustrations, and dreams. The barriers that once divided them were slowly breaking down, replaced by mutual respect and understanding. Though the wounds of their upbringing were deep, they were learning to heal together. Laura had begun attending therapy, seeking to understand the pain she had unwittingly caused her daughter. Michael, though slower to change, showed signs of reflection and remorse. The family was far from perfect, but the seeds of reconciliation had been planted. Emma's work with the advocacy group had expanded, allowing her to speak at community events and mentor young women facing similar struggles. Her voice, once silenced, now resonated with power and purpose, inspiring others to find their own strength. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden leaves danced outside her window, Emma received a call that would mark a new chapter, a scholarship to a prestigious university offering the chance to further her education and expand her horizons. Tears of joy and gratitude filled her eyes as she shared the news with Maya and Helena, the pillars of support who had stood by her through every trial. Together they celebrated not just the achievement, but the promise of a future shaped by Emma's courage and determination. As she prepared for the next chapter of her life, Emma knew the road ahead would bring challenges, but she faced it with an unwavering spirit and the knowledge that she was no longer defined by her past. She was a woman who had broken free, who had embraced her future with open arms, and who would continue to shine no matter what lay ahead. The crisp air of the early morning filled Emma's lungs as she stood at the threshold of the university campus, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and apprehension. This was the moment she had fought for, the chance to step beyond the shadows of her past and immerse herself in a world of knowledge, opportunity, and growth. The campus buzzed with life students rushing between classes, laughter echoing across the green lawns and the scent of freshly printed books mingling with autumn leaves. Emma felt both small and infinite, a newcomer eager to carve out her place. Classes challenged her intellect and broadened her perspective. She excelled in law and business courses, driven not only by academic ambition, but by a deep desire to empower others like herself. Professors noted her dedication, peers sought her insight, and she began to build a network of friends and mentors. Yet the transition was not without struggles. The weight of her family's past still lingered, sometimes manifesting as self-doubt or moments of isolation. But Emma drew strength from within and from those who believed in her. She journaled frequently, capturing the highs and lows, and found solace in the support of Maya and Helena, who remained constant anchors in her life. Outside the classroom, Emma continued her advocacy work, speaking at seminars and volunteering with organizations focused on financial justice and family rights. Her story resonated deeply, inspiring others to confront their own challenges. One evening during a campus event, Emma met Liam, a passionate activist with a gentle demeanor and a fierce commitment to social justice. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, sharing dreams, fears, and the desire to make a difference. A new connection blossomed, adding warmth and companionship to Emma's journey. As the semester unfolded, Emma faced the complexities of balancing academic rigor, personal growth, and healing old wounds. She learned to embrace vulnerability as a strength, to ask for help when needed, and to celebrate every small victory. Looking out over the campus from her dorm window, Emma felt a profound sense of possibility. The future was vast and uncertain, but it was hers to shape. With every step forward, she was rewriting her story, not as the unseen daughter, but as a woman of courage, resilience, and boundless hope. The chill of winter settled over the campus, blanketing the grounds in a soft layer of snow. Inside the cozy warmth of the student lounge, Emma sat surrounded by textbooks and notes, but her mind was elsewhere, reflecting on how far she had come and the journey still ahead. The academic pressure was intense, with exams looming and projects piling up. Yet Emma had learned to face these challenges with a quiet determination, drawing on the resilience forged in her past struggles. She no longer felt alone. A supportive community of friends, professors, and mentors had become her new family. But beyond the books and lectures, Emma faced emotional challenges she hadn't anticipated. Memories of her childhood, the neglect, the favoritism, the betrayal would sometimes surface unbidden, stirring doubts and fears. Moments of loneliness crept in, reminding her that healing was an ongoing process. One evening, after a difficult day, Emma confided in Liam, her growing companion and confidant. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully escape the shadows of my past," she admitted, her voice trembling with honesty. Liam reached across the table, his hand warm and steady. "Healing isn't linear," he said softly. "It's okay to have bad days. What matters is that you keep moving forward." Their bond deepened, grounded in trust and understanding. Liam encouraged Emma to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength, teaching her that opening up was not a sign of weakness, but a path to true connection. Inspired, Emma began leading a support group on campus for students facing family struggles and emotional trauma. Sharing her story and hearing others' experiences created a space of empathy and healing, transforming pain into power. As winter gave way to spring, Emma felt herself growing, not just academically, but emotionally and spiritually. The girl who had once hidden in the shadows was blossoming into a woman who faced life with courage and compassion. She understood now that strength wasn't about perfection or unbreakable will. It was about embracing imperfection, accepting help, and daring to hope. Standing beneath the blossoming trees on campus, Emma breathed deeply, ready to face whatever the future held, with an open heart and unwavering spirit. The sun rose gently over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the campus. Emma stood at the edge of the graduation stage, her heart pounding with a mixture of pride, relief, and anticipation. Years of struggle, pain, and perseverance had led her to this moment, the culmination of a journey that had transformed her from the unseen daughter into a woman empowered to shape her own destiny. As she accepted her diploma, the applause ringing in her ears, Emma reflected on the path she had traveled. The battles fought within her family, the long nights of study, the friendships forged, and the strength discovered in vulnerability, all woven together into the fabric of her story. Her parents were no longer the defining force in her life. Instead, she had built a community of support, love, and purpose. James, standing in the crowd, smiled with genuine pride, their once fractured relationship mended by understanding and forgiveness. Emma's future stretched wide before her, full of possibilities. She planned to continue her advocacy, to use her voice and experiences to uplift others facing injustice. Her jewelry business thrived, symbolizing resilience and beauty born from hardship. Later that evening, surrounded by friends and loved ones, Emma raised a glass in quiet celebration. The journey was far from over, but she embraced it with open arms, knowing she was no longer defined by her past. She was a woman reborn, strong, hopeful, and ready to write the next chapter of her life on her own terms.